Hello, welcome to There's Always Room for Dessert, Noah and the Ark version. This is going to be the science of the Ark and the resources with which to find the science of the Ark. And so it's all great things. But we're going to dive right in. And yes, this is my dessert. It is root beer. Have you seen how many calories and sugar are in this thing? And yes, it's a beef stick and fireworks, which that's a manly dessert. dessert. uh, anyway, so there's always room for dessert means I'm giving you things that I didn't get to have time to get to on Sunday morning. Had to leave out of the message. I'm gonna make sure this thing doesn't explode on me. And particularly, this is going to be a little bit shorter video. I'm going to go through kind of the categories of things in terms of the science of the Ark, Noah's Ark, all right? And then tell you where to find kind of the deeper detail on that, and then let you go get some yourself, all right? So, if you don't know, a lot of the information that I would get on the science of the Ark comes from the Ark Encounter in Kentucky. And yep, beef stick counts as dessert in my book. You men, you know what I'm talking about. Come on. But the Ark Encounter in Kentucky, they built a life-size version of the Ark. It's humongous. It's bigger than you would expect. It's bigger than you think. When you read the text, it does not give you the full picture of when you walk up onto what the actual size of that ark would have been. It's humongous. Okay, 3 stories, huge amounts of cubic feet in there, and they were able to stack and put lots of animals in there. I go through some of that on Sunday morning's message, so if you missed Sunday morning's message, you're going to want to go back through that. They only need to put about 34,000 animals on the ark, probably less than that. Okay, but if you want to dive deep into some of these areas, like questions in terms of the science of the ark, like how did they fit the animals? How specifically did they fit the animals? Ark Encounter has lots of resources. Ark Encounter is built by a company called Answers in Genesis, which is an apologetics or defense of the faith organization primarily. And so they have the Creation Museum that they built, and then they have the Ark Encounter they built. That's about 45 minutes away from each other. But then they have a website called Answers in Genesis, and YouTube videos and all that kind of stuff. But their website has lots of resources, articles on these topics as well. So you can do a deep dive just by going to their website. The other place I would direct you to is Discovery Institute. Discovery Institute, Discovery Science. These are old Earth creationists. So Ark Encounter Creation Museum are young Earth creationists. Discovery Institute are old Earth creationists. And so, what up, Becky? How you doing? So they come at it from a little bit different perspective, but their science is amazing. They have so many microbiologists, and they have the best work I can tell on disproving evolution from Discovery Science or the Discovery Institute. So look them up. Got a great YouTube channel, has a bunch of amazing videos and tons of articles too, and they're doing tons of research. Same with Answers in Genesis, doing lots and lots of research. Let me go through categories of the science of the Ark and how explanations of these things that the Ark Encounter provides in their materials. And here's some of the resources. The Ark Signs book. These are all the signs that are throughout the museum. We purchased this. It's great because it gives you so much of that science. The Ark Encounter, Journey Through the Ark Encounter, gives you pictures of the different exhibits. So it reminds us, because we've been there, what we went through. And you have the same thing for the Creation Museum. Here's the Creation Museum Journey Through book, reminds you, has pictures of the exhibits. And then the Creation Museum Signs book has all the signage throughout the museum, and that's going to give you a lot of science. They have deeper dive articles. They show their work in their website as well. So Answers in Genesis is a great place to go. So explanations of how they fit animals on the ark, how they fed the animals, how they had drinking water on the ark. for many months, right? How they fed themselves, how they used the bathroom, how they had ventilation on the Ark, how they entertained themselves, the brilliance of ancient humans, and how they could have thought through this and understood all these things. Each different kind or family of animal and how their DNA had the information that would have been needed for all the different species variations that we see from there. How humans and our DNA of all different ethnic groups would have existed in those three original families. You have Noah and his wife, but you also have Shem and his wife, Ham and his wife, Japheth and his wife. And though there was lots of DNA information present in those families from which the rest of the world then repopulated. And so the DNA information present was what gave us the variations within humans that we see now. Variations in the human race, which we are one race, right? Human race. Okay, so there's a lot more there. And we're going to talk about that more on Sunday with the Tower of Babel. But here's some other categories of things that the Creation Museum and Ark Encounter resource, and those books that I showed you, but also the website and the museums themselves. Explanations for the flood and what happened with it. Okay, so then you're talking about the geological column and the bending of rock layers, which we see all over the world. Trees that go all the way up through the rock layers. Okay, these are some things that actually some of the conventional science cannot explain. But the flood does, okay? There's no erosional features like these big dips into the rock layers like should be present if this happened over a long period of time, but the flood would explain those. Okay, so then there's the fossils. So the Ark Encounter walks you through why and how fossils, they got deposited in layers because of the flood, just like we see all over the world. The variation of species and how that happens, and how that we from two dogs we have all the different dog species, and for instance, how species go extinct. Natural selection is not evolution. Natural selection is devolution. It's the opposite. It's literally the opposite of evolution. So natural selection is definitely a thing, but it doesn't prove evolution. It actually kind of proves the opposite. So, how plants ended up where they did. So plants, they're talking about how there's like on the coastal areas, there's huge commonality in certain coastal areas. When the continents were all together, there's commonality when they split apart. And how did that happen with the flood? And there's very good explanations for that. They go through the separation of the continents, how that would have happened, how mountains and canyons and rivers and plateaus and lakes were formed. The flood explains the common plants on different continent edges, and it explains the ice age after the flood, and how the formation of glaciers and all those kinds of things. So they go through all of that. And one of the key pieces that I mentioned on Sunday that I think is really interesting to me. So science is what? Observable, repeatable. Observable, repeatable. That's the basic building block of all science. Okay? So what you see in Mount St. Helens is something that was well observed, it was well documented. Most great scientists who were worth their salt in terms of the geological side of things were there when Mount St. Helens happened, when the volcanic explosion happened. And most of them were studying in detail, and every huge scientific organization had seismic meters there, and had cameras there, and had scientists close by, so that whenever that thing went off, they were ready for it, because they were going to study it, and they did. And there's deep, intense study. There's video footage. There's pictorial footage. This is from 1980 and 1982. So we have as intense study as you can possibly have done on the Mount St. Helens eruption. And what we see there is that there were canyons, multiple different canyons made. There's actually 4 different canyons made on a larger scale. From the mudslides, because there's a lake below Mount St. Helens, and and the lava went into the lake. The lake overflowed. The mudslides came out from that. All these forests got just completely taken out. The elk population all there, tens of thousands of elk got killed in that eruption. And the forest then became floating in this lava lake because now it's water mixed with lava, mixed with all this other stuff, mixed with mud. And the forests were floating in there, and they eventually, dumped out at the other end of it, and it deposited in sides and became these like floating forests, but then petrified forests. Now they're petrified forests. Within a couple years, okay, we had fossilized forests. It's crazy when you think about and all of the sediment that was dropped there, and then we also have canyons that were formed. Okay, we have the peat moss that developed into what will be very soon oil, and oil deposits and natural gas deposits, which were like, oh, well, we needed all this time to do that. We didn't. Actually, the catastrophe of the flood would explain that, because of the mudslides, because of the way things are deposited, because of that. So, all that to say, Mount St. Helens is a very interesting, because the canyons that were developed would, if you just magnify that on a greater scale, a global scale, well, that's why we have the Grand Canyon. The Colorado River does not explain the Grand Canyon. The Colorado River, it's not cutting away. The Colorado River presently is not cutting deeper into the canyon. We haven't been able to observe it or repeat it. So what would have caused that huge giant rift in our land where we have a canyon like that? A global flood, global catastrophe. So they go through and talk through all that, and it's really good. And so I would encourage you to go to Answers in Genesis, Ark Encounter, Creation Museum, and check all those things out. Discovery Institute, Discovery Science. The science of Noah's Ark is quite extensive. Dinosaurs. What do we do with those? Well, how do we understand those? They go through all of it. So I just wanted to give you that quick update, and we'll see you guys. God bless you. Thanks for having a wonderful week, and we'll see you on Sunday.